Are you Lan? Are you Mai? Tomorrow will be the day of your great wedding. My father's voice suddenly sounded in my ear. I froze for a moment, then suddenly realized I had been reborn. I had returned to the day before my wedding. When I lifted my eyes, they met the gaze of my legitimate elder sister, Rulan. As she looked over, a gentle smile curved her lips, but calculation flickered in the depths of her eyes. I returned a faint smile, already fully aware in my heart I knew all too well what she was plotting. It should have been her who married into the Su Wang manor as the heir's wife, while I was betrothed to the newly crowned martial champion. After all, she was the legitimate daughter, while I was merely a concubine-born daughter raised under the name of the legitimate wife. Looking back now, the proposal that we marry on the same day was a trap she had carefully set from the very beginning. She simply wanted to switch marriages, that was all. After all, father could not bear to refuse the marriage. Alliance with the prince's residence. One in my previous life, I sensed something was wrong almost the moment I stepped into the bridal sedan. The grand wedding procession sent by the prince's residence, drums and gongs thundered. A 10-mile stretch of red bridal adornments. How could it possibly compare with the home of a mere martial champion? Only then did I hear that Xiao Hongji was a cripple who could not walk, and Wu Liang, whom I had met a few times, had sword-like eyebrows, bright eyes, and an imposing, dashing air. When I discovered I had gotten into the wrong bridal sedan, I immediately burst into tears and tantrums, and stubbornly returned to the Wu family's bridal sedan. Who would have thought that this was only the beginning of the nightmare? My mother-in-law, Madame Wu, was formidable. Morning and evening formalities were merely an appetizer. Do everything possible to torment me just because the daughter-in-law she had set her sights on was her niece. But Wu Liang insisted on marrying a daughter of the Shun family. The Wu family had practiced martial arts for generations, and not only could I not outtalk her, I couldn't beat her either. Less than a month after I married into the family, my mother-in-law, on the grounds that I had borne no child, forced her niece from her natal family into the house. Naturally, I was unwilling. I had borne no child because Wu Liang always called out Rulan's name in the night. I did not want to be that substitute. I wanted to win his heart. Who would have thought that no matter how hard I tried, it would be useless? And just when I finally came to terms with it, Mrs. Wu tortured me day after day. Wu Liang, however, turned a blind eye to my complaints and even said, "Your mother's health is poor. Be more understanding. Be understanding." Until the day I died, that old hag was still alive and kicking. And after Rulan married into the Wang residence, although the heir's legs and feet were inconvenient, he treated her like the apple of his eye. She often returned to the manor to complain, but the springtime glow at the corners of her eyes and brows could not deceive anyone. In 3 years, I had grown haggard, as if I had aged 10 years, while she became ever more charming and alluring in this life. Since she so desperately wants to switch, then I'll fulfill her wish. I'll marry into the prince's manor. Neither of the two men likes me anyway. It would be better to marry someone with power too. On the day of the wedding, everything played out just as it had in my past life. With my red bridal veil over my head, I got into the bridal sedan chair and secretly lifted a corner to peek. Sure enough, it was still that incomparably lavish sedan chair from the prince's residence. It was lined with brocade, with curling wisps of incense drifting through the air. It was far better than the gilded but worthless sedan chair from the Wu family, by who knew how many times. I closed my eyes and rested, letting the sedan bearers carry me into the prince's mansion. After bowing to heaven and earth and entering the bridal chamber, I finally truly relaxed. I lifted my veil to look around this new room. Carved beams and painted rafters, lustrous pearls shining brightly everywhere revealed the wealth and splendor of the prince's mansion. They say the prince's mansion is deeply wealthy, and seeing it today, it truly lives up to its reputation. I was secretly delighted when I suddenly heard a soft knock at the door. Soon, a figure reeking of alcohol sat down beside me. My heart was pounding. As long as I got through tonight, I would officially become the crown prince's consort. Once I had a child, I would finally have secured my footing in this prince's residence. Who would have thought that he would delay so long in lifting the bridal veil, and instead say in a low voice, "Rulan, I truly like you. I will treat you well in the days to come." I was jolted to the core. Xiao Hongji was actually so deeply in love with Rulan. What should I do then? Will he kick me out? As I listened to Xiao Hongji continue pouring out his heart, I nervously twisted the silk handkerchief in my hands. Things had come to this point. No matter what I did now, he was probably unlikely to fall in love with me, then I might as well go along with the mistake. Anyway, I just want to have a child. By the time he finally reached out and lifted the veil, I had already made up my mind. The veil drifted to the ground when Xiao Hongji saw my face. Clearly, he was both shocked and furious. Who are you? Why are you here? Where is Rulan? I smiled sweetly. This humble wife is your newlywed bride, Shenru Mei. His voice suddenly turned icy and sharp. No, you are not. My wife is Rulan. Why are you here? Where is Rulan? Rulan is probably already at the Wu family's place, I said lightly. What? Xiao Hongji looked heartbroken, got up, and was about to leave, still muttering, Rulan, 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 where are you? On the wedding night, how could I possibly give up the title of the heir's wife that had come into my hands? My gaze sharpened, and I struck the back of his neck with a precise knife-hand blow. Once he fainted, I briskly carried him onto the bed and untied his sash. A melon forcibly twisted from the vine may not be sweet, but at least it quenches thirst. Strangely enough, although he had a slight limp, his face was quite handsome. I used to think Wu Liang was already the most stunning beauty in the world, but I never expected Xiao Hongji to surpass him by even more, and so I forced the issue and turned raw rice into cooked rice. In the middle of the night, he woke up and abruptly pushed me away. I rolled toward the inner side of the bed, and in a daze heard the rustle of him getting dressed and leaving. Drowsiness overwhelmed me, and I turned over and fell into a deep sleep again. 3 The next morning, the maid Xiaodao hurried in to report, Shizhi Fei, Shizhi Yi can't be found. I lazily gathered my temple hair and said absent-mindedly, it's fine. That blood-stained handkerchief should already have been shown to the princess consort. Now that I am a legitimate heir's wife, he can go wherever he wants. The Su King had already gone to court, and I went alone to the main courtyard to offer tea to the princess consort. When the princess consort saw me enter, a hint of surprise flashed in her eyes, but she quickly regained her dignified and noble bearing. She must have realized that the dowry maid accompanying the bride was still Yu Lan's person, yet the bride herself had been replaced. Your daughter-in-law offers tea to mother-in-law. I bowed gracefully, holding up the teacup with both hands. Where is Shen Rulan? The princess consort asked coldly. I feigned surprise, replying to your highness, your daughter-in-law was also unaware. It was only after entering the bridal chamber last night that I realized this was the prince's mansion, not the Wu family's. You really didn't know. Every word your daughter-in-law says is true. If mother-in-law doesn't believe it, you may send someone to investigate. I also want to know how the wedding sedan chair could have been carried to the wrong place. The princess consort studied me for a moment, and finally took the teacup. Forget it, since you've already entered the household, let it be. Taking the opportunity, I pleaded, since I've already married into the prince's mansion, I hope mother-in-law will make the decision and have this daughter-in-law's dowry inventoried and stored as soon as possible. The princess consort gave me a meaningful look. Rest assured about this, I will make the arrangements myself. I smiled to myself. It seems the princess consort is not necessarily satisfied with Rulan either. This morning, I heard Xiaodao say that this marriage was originally insisted upon by Xiao Hongji, and the princess consort had never been fond of the Shen family. I suppose the princess consort will investigate and find out why the bridal sedan ended up going to the wrong place anyway. I had nothing to do with any of this for 3 straight days. Xiao Hongji was nowhere to be seen. I was more than happy to have some peace and quiet. The princess consort excused me from my daily morning greetings, so I spent my days leisurely in my own courtyard. After taking stock of my dowry, I found that I had quite a bit of money on hand. Aside from Xiao Dao, who had been assigned to me as a personal maid by the prince's residence, the others had all come as part of my Shen family dowry. They have always looked down on me, this daughter born to a concubine, so their service naturally was perfunctory. However, I never wanted those maids who looked down on everyone to begin with. I asked the princess consort for a few more maids. I also thought I should get back the 2 maids who used to serve me before, for on the day of the return visit to my parents' home, Xiao Hongji unexpectedly showed up bright and early with a sullen face. He got into the carriage. I secretly guessed that he wanted to go back to see Rulan. Let him see her, then, in any case, as long as he could accompany me on the return visit, I would still be saving face. When we arrived at the Shun residence, Rulan and Wu Liang were already waiting in the hall. Rulan's cheeks were swollen and red, clear signs that she had been beaten. From the moment Xiao Hongji walked in, his gaze had been fixed on Rulan, his eyes full of distress. I didn't care much, but Wu Liang was clearly displeased and shielded Rulan behind him. Rulan also tightly clutched Wu Liang's sleeve, looking every bit the picture of devoted lovers. Father-in-law, Xiao Hongji suddenly said, since the bridal sedan was sent to the wrong place, we should of course switch the bride back. I immediately echoed, father is right. That day, the bridal sedan was taken to the wrong place, and this daughter is willing to return to the Wu family. No way. Rulan and Wu Liang refused in unison. Xiao Hongji looked at Rulan with anguish. Rulan, are you really this unwilling to marry me? Wu Liang shielded Rulan even more tightly. Forgive us, Your Highness, since we are already husband and wife, it would truly be inconvenient to switch back. Father also hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Your Highness, things have come to this point, and Rumei is a fine girl as well. Xiao Hongji gave a cold snort, but his gaze never left Rulan. I took the opportunity to say to father, Father, since elder sister is unwilling to switch back, your daughter will not insist. However, those few dowry maids were originally there to serve elder sister. Why not let them return to serve her? The legitimate mother immediately agreed. That's exactly how it should be. And the dowry, mother, I gently interrupted. I'm afraid the dowry can't be taken back. The princess has already had it inventoried and put into storage. The legitimate mother glared at me fiercely. Father waved his hand. Forget it. The dowries of the two families were almost the same to begin with, so let's leave it at that. I sneered inwardly. Hardly any difference. The gap in those boxes of genuine gold and silver, my legitimate mother was probably all too aware of. My legitimate mother wore a pained expression, and Rulan also shot me a resentful look. I returned a faint smile. Now that the money had already been secured, let them glare all they wanted. It was only a glance at me, and it's not like I had to pay silver 5. Perhaps the sight of Rulan and Wu Liang, so deeply devoted to each other, had stung Xiao Hongji's heart. When he returned to the prince's residence in the afternoon, his entire body was shrouded in a layer of sullen gloom. I deliberately softened my breathing, wishing I could shrink myself into a little shadow, but he still directed his anger at me. Why didn't you go to the Wu family on the wedding night? He suddenly demanded sharply. I let out a sneer. My lord, that's a rather interesting question. When they were in the midst of their wedding night, wrapped up in passion, what was I supposed to do there? Attend the ceremony. Impudent. He suddenly clamped his hand around my throat. You knew all along that Rulan would not marry me, didn't you? I pried his fingers off without backing down. Your Highness, don't slander me without cause. I only know that my sister has feelings for Wu Liang. My marriage to the Wu family was arranged by my stepmother in the first place. Now that my sister has married into that family, what does it have to do with me? If anyone is to blame, it's Your Highness for insisting on forcing this marriage. In the end, it only backfired. Xiao Hongji let go listlessly, bitterness seeping through his voice. She dislikes me this much because I'm a cripple. I glanced at his leg covertly. In truth, that slight limp was almost impossible to notice unless one looked closely. If she doesn't like you, then she doesn't like you. It has nothing to do with your legs, I said carelessly. He snorted coldly. Otherwise, how am I any worse than Wu Liang? I said softly. If elder sister doesn't care about you, I rather like you, you know, who cares about your liking? He glared at me in exasperated embarrassment. I rolled my eyes inwardly. He really took it seriously just because I said it offhand. 6. After returning to the prince's residence, Xiao Hongji once again vanished without a trace. After not seeing him for several days, I wasn't anxious, but the princess consort could no longer sit still. The princess consort called me over, with a note of reproach in her voice. Rumei, you've only just been married, and you're already letting the air roam outside, dallying among flowers. I muttered to myself that he would surely remain faithful to Rulan, pure as jade in my previous life. When Rulan returned to the manor, she said the princess consort had promoted several beautiful concubines. But Xiao Hongji did not even look at them on the surface. I said respectfully, "Mother-in-law, please calm your anger. It's because this daughter-in-law is not good enough that the heir refuses to come home. How about, mother-in-law finds the heir a pleasing concubine? This." The princess consort was still hesitating when Xiao Hongji suddenly burst in. "No need." He reeked of alcohol, utterly dejected. He must have gone to look for Rulan again. And once more witnessed Rulan and Wu Liang's affectionate scene. The princess glanced at me, and I hurriedly supported him back to the room. Xiao Hongji stared at me and asked, "Why is she so fond of that Wu surnamed man?" I gave a light smile and said, "Just as the heir is infatuated with Rulan, the word love itself has never had any logic to it. And you?" He suddenly asked, "Do you like me?" Me, my eyes shifted languidly. "If the heir apparent wants me to like it, then I like it. I don't want that." He immediately objected. "When a man says no, he often means the opposite." I gently wrapped my arms around his waist. "But sometimes, I can't help myself, really." He looked at me intensely. "Of course." I leaned close to his ear and whispered softly, "If the heir apparent treats me as Rulan, that would not be impossible either." Xiao Hongji's eyes grew hazy, and he suddenly swept me up in his arms and strode toward the inner chamber. The red candles burned high, and the gauze curtains swayed lightly, until deep into the silent night. When I finally fell into an exhausted sleep, I vaguely heard him whisper in my ear, "Rulan, Rulan, I really like you." I curved my lips and gently rested a hand on my lower abdomen. I wondered whether this encounter could successfully leave me with a child. A month later, Rulan was diagnosed as pregnant. I heard that Wu Liang treated her extremely well. Even when Madame Wu tried several times to make her stand as punishment, he protected her every time. I couldn't help but sneer. A man's feelings for the woman he loves are indeed attentive in every matter. When had Wu Liang ever treated me like that in my previous life? Even when his mother punished me, he would only watch coldly and then tell me to reflect on my own faults. These rumors naturally did not escape Xiao Hongji's ears. A few days later, he volunteered to go to a neighboring province to help control the flooding. The princess consort summoned me, her brows full of worry. "Rumei, you really still can't keep the young lord?" I gave a bitter smile and shook my head. "Mother-in-law, please see clearly. How could this daughter-in-law possibly have any say over the young lord?" The princess consort let out a long sigh. She knew better than anyone why her son had left. Not long after Xiao Hongji left the manor, I too was diagnosed as pregnant. The princess consort was overjoyed, and gifts and rewards were sent over like flowing water. I rested quietly and nursed the pregnancy, while the child in my womb grew day by day. Meanwhile, news came from the Wu residence. Because Rulan was pregnant and unable to serve, Lady Wu actually brought her own niece into the household. Rulan was furious over this, and even more dejected because Lady Wu had schemed to get Wu Liang drunk and sent him into her niece's room. Later on, came the devastating news that Rulan had miscarried. Listening to these reports, I realized that Lady Wu was indeed just as she had been in my previous life. Only after that, there was no more news of Rulan. Later on, I heard that Wu Liang had moved out of the Wu residence. I found it strange, but it had nothing to do with me, so I didn't think much of it. 3 months later, Xiao Hongji returned. He even brought back a girl named Li Xiu, whose appearance was almost exactly the same as Rulan's. "Rumei, I want to take her as a concubine," Xiao Hongji said bluntly. Of course I had no objection. Now that I have a child in my womb as my support, I simply don't care about any of this. It's just that the more I looked at Li Xiu, the more she resembled Rulan. When the princess first saw Li Xiu, her expression changed abruptly. After Xiao Hongji left with Xiu, the princess consort asked me, "Rumei, have you noticed anything suspicious? Miss Xiu does indeed resemble my elder sister." I answered truthfully. The princess consort let out a cold laugh. "Is resemble all? Shen Rulan has not shown up at the Wu residence for half a month. Though this matter has been kept under wraps, it can't be hidden from me." "I had no idea about this," I said, genuinely surprised. Pregnant and living in seclusion, it was only natural that I'd be cut off from news. Could it be that Rulan wants to return to the prince's residence again? Yes, She must have had enough of the torment at the Wu residence. 8. Although the princess tried every possible means to obstruct it, Xiao Hongji once again threatened suicide and insisted on taking Siyu as a concubine. When I saw Li Siyu again, she was kneeling on the ground to offer me tea, her gaze fixed straight on me with just one glance. I was certain she was not only Rulan, but the reborn Rulan returned from the dead in my past life. She hated me for marrying Wu Liang, and she had looked at me just like this time. What was it for? My heart suddenly tightened, yet I secretly felt relieved. Fortunately, I had been reborn a little earlier than her. The princess consort arranged for Ci to stay in the most remote courtyard of the prince's residence. The place was secluded and quiet, far from my own quarters, which saved me quite a bit of trouble. Strangely enough, ever since Ci entered the residence, the princess consort had grown even closer to me than before. Xiao Dao once whispered to me, "Young madam, you have such a gentle temperament and never fight for favor or get jealous. Aside from being unable to keep the young lord in line, there's nothing else the princess consort can find fault with. But that Miss Siyu is different. The heir apparent almost spends every night at her place, never leaving her side." She asked me with worry, "Princess consort, aren't you afraid she'll get pregnant first?" I gave a light laugh, recalling the day Siyu entered the manor. The princess consort had specially ordered someone to simmer chicken soup, saying it was to nourish her body. I have always liked chicken soup, and during pregnancy I drank a bowl every few days, but that day, the princess consort did not grant me even half a spoonful. It seems there was something added to the soup that I could not touch. How shrewd a person is the princess consort. She has only one son under her knees, Xiao Heng. How could she allow him to be held back by romantic entanglements? I don't care about Xiao Hongji. Although the princess consort complains that I'm not tough enough, in her heart she still regards me as one of her own. But if someone monopolized Xiao Hongji's favor, then the princess consort would surely regard that person as a thorn in her side. I heard that it was only after Xiao Hongji threatened to die that the princess consort reluctantly agreed to let him marry Rulan. In my previous life, even until I died, Rulan's belly had never shown any sign of pregnancy. In this life, she was nothing more than a concubine. How could the princess consort ever let her become pregnant? I continued to carry the child with peace of mind, and in my free time I followed the princess consort to learn the art of managing a household. The princess consort would often pat my hand and say meaningfully, "Rumei, once you give birth to the child, this prince's residence will eventually be yours." I stroked my lower abdomen and obediently agreed. As for Xiao Hongji, let him do as he pleased. The princess did not tell the Wu family about Siyu, so naturally I would not do anything she disliked anyway. Even if Wu Liang were told, Xiao Hongji would still have a way to bring her back. 9. Now that I am pregnant, I never intended to compete with Siyu for Xiao Hongji's favor. I had thought we could stay out of each other's way, but who would have expected that she could not tolerate me? Indeed, for someone who has lived a second life, how could she be willing to remain in the position of a concubine? The position of the princess consort was what she truly wanted. Unfortunately, she couldn't even get to see me, even if she tried every day to seduce Xiao Hongji into divorcing his wife. How could the princess dowager possibly let her run wild? So she set her sights on the child. At first, she only took all kinds of fertility tonics every day, hoping night after night that she would conceive an heir. But day after day passed, and there was still no sign of movement in her belly. Later on, she even dared to bring a village shaman into the mansion. The princess consort was so furious that her face turned livid, yet Xiao Hongji still shielded her in every possible way. Ironically, the fortune teller even claimed she could determine the baby's sex. Xiao Hongji then ordered that I be taken to the front courtyard. The fortune teller put on a show, counting on her fingers and chanting incantations, and declared that I was carrying a girl. Even more absurd, the fortune teller actually claimed she could turn a girl into a boy. I know the princess consort also wants me to have a boy. Last time the imperial physician examined me, he said he couldn't be certain it was a boy. I didn't want to take any risks with the child, so I simply closed my eyes and pretended to faint. After the princess consort found out, she hurriedly summoned the imperial physician. After the imperial physician took my pulse, he announced with delight that I was carrying twins, a boy and a girl. The princess consort immediately ordered her servants to beat the charlatan fortune-teller out of the estate with clubs. She had originally intended to expel Siyu from the estate as well, but Xiao Heng threatened to kill himself, left with no choice. The princess consort could only punish Siyu by making her kneel in the ancestral hall and pray for the child in my womb. 10. I naturally felt unwilling to accept it. Not long after, she actually persuaded Xiao Hengji to invite my legitimate mother into the prince's mansion to visit me. Looking at the haughty legitimate mother before me, I could not help but sneer. By now, I was the dignified heir's wife of the Su Wang mansion, and even my father would have to show me some deference when he saw me. How nice of her. She actually dares to boss me around in the prince's residence, and she even says I should treat my concubines well. Mother, that's an amusing thing to say. I gently stroked the teacup and said coldly, I wonder how you treated my birth mother back then. The Shun household's rules were that whenever a concubine gave birth to a child, the child had to be sent to the country estate outside the city, leave the child to be raised by the legitimate wife. Yet my birth mother was so beautiful that father could not bear to send her away, so what happened? A bowl of medicinal soup from the legitimate wife took my birth mother's life. They also sent me to the outskirts to grow up. Only when it was time for me to marry did they suddenly take me back to the household, and now she comes to me talking about something like, why do women make things hard for other women? What a ridiculous joke. My legitimate mother wore a gloomy expression and said sternly, Rumei, you must be clear. The position of the crown prince's wife was never yours in the first place. Hearing this, I laughed a few times. Then mother might as well go tell the princess consort, have me switched back to the Wu family and bring Rulan back. Oh, I forgot. I deliberately drew out my tone. Rulan is already gone. But mother, you and this Miss Siyu seem to be on rather intimate terms. No, perhaps I should go to the Wu residence and tell Wu Liang. My stepmother raised her hand to strike me, just as she had done before in the Shen household. Unfortunately, back then I was powerless to resist. Even if I left home, I had no household registration, and I could hardly take a single step. It's different now. I seized her wrist. Mother, this is the prince's mansion. My legitimate mother trembled with rage. A petty person intoxicated by success. With your status as a concubine-born daughter, you could never marry the young master. That's right, I can't marry him. I loosened my grip and leisurely straightened my sleeves. Wasn't it you who went to all lengths to send me into the prince's manor? If you've got the ability, then drive me out. Watching my legitimate mother storm off in anger, I let out a cold laugh. Mother and daughter indeed just couldn't stand to see me living well. 11. After that, I shut myself in and focused on caring for the baby in my womb. As for Xiao Hengji, he naturally remained deeply in love with Siyu. Then one day, Xiao Hengji suddenly acted out of character and said he had specially found 2 experienced midwives. When I saw one of them, Madame Zhong, my blood instantly froze. In my previous life, it was this Madame Zhong, who claimed to have come out of the palace, who personally ended my life in the Wu residence. She pretended to be kind and gentle as she delivered me, yet secretly took my life, and now, Rulan actually wants to use her hand to harm me once again. In the dead of night, I sent my trusted aide to break Zhong Po's leg. The next day, I had her driven out of the prince's residence on the pretext of old age and a leg injury. Though the princess consort found my actions suspicious, she still sought out a reliable midwife elsewhere. On the day of delivery, the excruciating pain from the twins made me feel as if I were dying and coming back to life. For an entire day and night, the delivery room was filled only with my screams and the midwife's words of encouragement. Xiao Hengji never once showed up, not even a word of concern, though I had long known he was cold and indifferent toward me. At this life or death moment, he was not even willing to make a show of concern. I still felt a chill in my heart when the loud cries of the 2 children rang out. I completely gave up hope from this day on. My only reliance would be these 2 children. The princess was overjoyed and burst into tears, immediately deciding to raise her grandsons herself. The wet nurses carefully selected from the palace took meticulous care of the 2 children. I leaned weakly against the head of the bed, looking at the healthy babies in swaddling clothes, a cold smile tugging at my lips. With these two children, no one would ever be able to shake my position in this manner. As for Xiao Hongji and Rulan, there was still plenty of time. 12 By the day the child turned 1 month old, the prince's residence was festooned with lanterns and streamers, and the full-month banquet arranged by the princess consort was extravagantly luxurious. On the guest list, the Wu family and the Shun family were prominently included, but usually, it was Madame Wu who handled such matters, so I had someone tell Wu Liang that he could find Rulan at the prince's mansion. Wu Liang went to the banquet dragging his exhausted body, his eye sockets sunken and his whole frame seeming to have lost a full layer of weight these days. He had nearly scoured every corner of the capital, all for the sake of finding Yulan's whereabouts. After several rounds of drinks, I deliberately had someone lead him to the back courtyard to meet Siyu. When Wu Liang clearly saw the person before him, his whole body jolted, and he suddenly pulled Siyu into his arms. Rulan, I've been searching for you for so long. At this moment, Siyu had already drunk quite a lot of wine, and her mood was already troubled. Since that unborn child was gone, she had been utterly despondent and thrown herself into the river, only to be unexpectedly reborn. She couldn't help but long for the wonderful days of her past life in the prince's manor, so she carefully orchestrated their reunion and took the alias Siyu. Xiao Hongji had indeed recognized her, and holding her in his arms, he sobbed uncontrollably. Rulan, you've suffered. From now on, I will definitely treat you well, but in this life, the days in the prince's manor were far less wonderful than she had imagined. As a concubine, she was placed in the most remote courtyard, where the princess consort made things difficult for her at every turn. What made her even more despairing was that, no matter how hard she tried, there was still no sign of pregnancy without a child. She would sooner or later be sent away by the princess consort. It had been this way in my previous life as well. Now, my situation in the prince's mansion was actually even more unbearable than it had been in the Wu residence. Seeing Wu Liang again at this moment, the grievances that had been bottled up for so long came flooding out. The two embraced and wept, unable to hold back their emotions. In the front courtyard, Xiao Hongji was always distracted. Over the past few months, he had personally witnessed the torment Siyu endured because of her pregnancy. Before the banquet had even ended, he excused himself and left the table just as he stepped through the courtyard gate. Suggestive sounds reached his ears the instant Xiao Hongji kicked open the door. His eyes were about to split with fury. Wu Liang and Siyu were entangled naked in each other's arms. The alcohol surged through him, and Xiao Hongji lunged at Wu Liang, raining punches and kicks down on him. The attendants, afraid because Siyu was naked, did not dare approach. After being hit twice, Wu Liang, a military officer, suddenly fought back, and both men, drunk on alcohol, lost their sense of propriety. By the time the prince and princess consort heard the news and arrived with their attendants, Wu Liang was straddling Xiao Hongji and throwing punches. The guards hurriedly pulled the two men apart, but it was already too late. Xiao Hongji was already dead. In a fit of rage, the prince immediately had Wu Liang thrown into prison. As for Siyu, the princess consort ordered someone to drag her away and beat her to death with the rod. 13 Holding the child in my arms, I listened absent-mindedly to Xiaotao's report, a mocking curve tugging at the corners of my lips. In this world, love is nothing but an illusion, only power and wealth are eternal. Rulan, oh Rulan, in the end, you were simply too greedy. In my previous life, I married Xiao Hongji, yet I still pined for Wu Liang. In this life, having been granted a second chance, I even deluded myself into continuing to enjoy Xiao Hongji's favor. But in this world, where is there such a thing as getting the best of both worlds? When I went to see her, she was already on the brink of death, her pale lips trembling faintly as she fixed her gaze on me with fierce hatred. Rumei, you are so cruel. The position of the Marchioness should have been mine. I smiled softly and bent down to whisper in her ear, Sister, rest in peace. Xiao Hongji is already dead. You two can go underground and be a pair of tragic lovers. As for the position of Marchioness, it will never be yours, because my son will soon be the new heir. Xiao Hongji died. Sister died, and soon Wu Liang also died. I heard that Madame Wu cried so hard it tore her heart out. After all, it was she and her niece who joined forces to kill the child in Rulan's womb. She just hadn't expected Wu Liang to be so devoted to Rulan that even after taking a concubine, he refused to set foot in anyone else's room ever again. After Rulan disappeared, he moved out of the Wu residence completely, searching for her everywhere until he was gaunt and hollowed out. I looked down at the two children in my arms and smiled in satisfaction. 5 years later, the Prince of Su ascended the throne, and the princess consort entered the inner palace as empress. Her only son was already dead, so naturally she devoted all her care and effort to her grandson. I was delighted to see it happen. 10 years later, the emperor had grown old, and the empress was determined to support the imperial grandson's succession, and I, as a matter of course, became the empress dowager. Another 5 years passed, and my mother-in-law fell gravely ill. I knelt before her bed, tears streaming down like rain. In this lifetime, if not for her guidance and support, I would never have made it to this day. Her gaunt hand gripped my wrist tightly, her cloudy eyes still sharp. You've done very well. Remember, a man's love can never compare to power, even if it's your own son. You must never soften your heart. I nodded heavily. She had warned me of these words on the second day after I married into the prince's residence, and I had never forgotten. Fortunately, I did it too after hearing the first story above. What are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I am the foolish daughter of the Prime Minister. At the age of 16, I married the Crown Prince. In the second month of our marriage, he was demoted to a commoner and exiled to Yangzhou. On the day of his demotion, he gripped me tightly and said, "What was your father's intention in marrying you to me? Don't you know?" I nodded and winked at him. "Because I like you. Everyone says he is cruel and immoral, but all I know is that he once gave me a piece of Osmanthus pastry. I am the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's household according to my nanny. I was originally the designated crown princess, but when I was 8 years old, while out on a spring outing, I took a fall and hit my head. Ever since then, father decided to have my clever half-sister marry Crown Prince Li Yang in my place. My half-sister did not like Li Yang. Every time she saw him, she would return to her room and throw things, crying and making a scene, refusing to marry him. Perhaps father was afraid there wouldn't be enough things in the house for her to smash. Finally, on the day of my coming-of-age ceremony, he called me into his study. "Yao Yao, would you be willing to marry the Crown Prince?" he asked softly. Walking up to me, my eyes lit up, and I nodded vigorously. "I do." Thus, my wedding with Li Yang was set for the 8th day of the 8th month. 3 months later, on the eve of my wedding, my half-sister strangely slipped a small box into my arms. Unlike her usual arrogance, she said to me, "Fool, consider this my debt to you. I don't understand what she owes me." Could it be that she had broken my things before? But if she hadn't been throwing things around, father wouldn't have made me marry Li Yang. Thinking of this, I smiled and patted her head. "It's fine, I don't blame you." The next day, I changed into a bright red wedding dress and was carried into the Eastern Palace in a large red bridal sedan chair. I sat on the bed for a long time while dozing off. The crown on my head accidentally knocked against the edge of the bed, making my eyes water from the pain. "Miss, perhaps I should help you to bed first." The nanny felt sorry for me and asked softly when she saw me like this. I shook my head. The hairpins and ornaments on my head jingled pleasantly as they clinked together. The instructing matron said that the ceremony isn't complete until His Highness the Crown Prince lifts the bridal veil. I tried to sit up straight. What if I fall asleep now and His Highness regrets it, deciding to marry my half-sister tomorrow instead? The matron sighed and said nothing more. A little while later, footsteps finally sounded outside the door. I heard someone open the door and walk toward me, and the next moment, the bridal veil over my head was lifted. The wedding candle beside us flickered, swaying the shadows on the ground. I looked up with a bright smile and saw Li Yang. He was also dressed in a bright red wedding robe, just like mine, which made him look even more handsome, like the immortal in the painting in father's study. "Your Highness, the Crown Prince," I called out sweetly. His indifferent gaze fell upon me, and the corner of his lips lifted as he chuckled. "So it really is you. The Prime Minister truly has a clever plan." I blinked. "What abacus? Does father know how to use an abacus?" He didn't answer me. only tossed aside the jade ruyi in his hand and turned to leave the room. The teaching matron said that marrying Li Yang meant I would eat and sleep with him, but now he's gone. I turned my head to look at the nanny, pouting my lips. Nanny, does the crown prince not like me? The nanny snapped back to reality, stepped forward, and cupped my face. How could that be? The young lady is so beautiful, no one could possibly dislike you. The crown prince is just too busy. The nanny never lies. Then I'll wait until His Highness the Crown Prince is not busy before going to keep him company in bed. Li Yang seems to be busy every single day. He never comes to eat with me, nor does he come to sleep with me for half a month. I had only seen him twice. Yet not a single word had passed between us that night. A heavy rain suddenly began to fall, with one thunderclap after another crashing down. I huddled in fear on my bed whenever such moments came. I would think how much better it would be if my mother was still here. But mother was no longer here. There was still Li Yang, so I gritted my teeth, hugged my bedding, and ran barefoot to the hall of diligent governance where Li Yang was staying. When I pushed the door open, he was still sitting at the desk, reading a ledger. Hearing the sound of the door opening, he didn't even look up. What is it? Holding the bedding, I poked only my head out and asked softly, Your Highness the Crown Prince, are you afraid of thunder? He was slightly taken aback before finally raising his head to look at me. I saw his handsome brows slightly furrowed, and his gaze eventually fell on my bare feet. I carefully hid my feet behind the door and smiled at him. If you're afraid of thunder, would you like Yao Yao to sleep with you? He looked at me for a long time before letting out a soft sigh. Come in. Those words were like music to my ears. I hurried inside, and as I turned to close the door, another thunderclap struck. It made me flinch, and the bedding in my arms fell to the floor. I quickly picked up the bedding and glanced back at Li Yang, only to find him looking at the booklet in his hand instead of me, which made me breathe a sigh of relief. The hall of diligent governance was not large. Walking a bit further inside, you could see the wooden bed where Li Yang usually slept, holding the bedding. I ran tap-tap a few steps inward. Stop. Before I could reach the wooden bed, Li Yang called out to me. I slowly turned around. He raised his hand to rub his head, then pointed at the bedding in my arms and said coldly, Throw it away. I obediently let go, and the bedding obediently fell to the ground. Someone, he called toward the door. Soon, someone pushed the door open and entered. He looked down at the booklet on the table. Prepare the foot bath for the crown princess. I sat quietly on the couch, letting the maid wash my feet while tilting my head to look at Li Yi. Only half of his face was visible, glowing brilliantly in the candlelight. Truly handsome. After everyone had withdrawn, Li Yang turned his head to look at me again. He asked me, What are you smiling at? I answered honestly, You're good looking. His long eyelashes seemed to tremble slightly as he set down the booklet in his hand and walked toward me. I quickly scooted over to make room for him. Aren't you afraid of me? He asked, sitting down on the edge of the bed. I blinked. Why should I be afraid of you? Your half-sister bursts into tears at the mere sight of me. It seems that's the case. She's a crybaby, and it has nothing to do with the crown prince. I lied. He chuckled. Just then, another bolt of lightning struck outside the window, and I was so frightened that I immediately threw myself into his arms. He didn't pat my back gently like mother would, just letting me hold him. After a while, it grew quiet outside. I finally released him, lowering my head to tug at his sleeve. Your Highness, actually, it's Yao Yao who's afraid of thunder. Could you stay and sleep with me? He glanced down at my hand, then looked at me. All right, I knew it. Ever since I was 8 years old, I knew Li Yang was a good person, and it's still the same now. By the time the nanny found me, Li Yang had already left. Your Highness, you nearly scared this old servant to death. She rushed in, only letting out a sigh of relief when she saw I was safe and sound. I knew why she said that. Everyone in the Eastern Palace fears Li Yang. Even the head maid dares not look him in the eye, as if he were a man-eating tiger. But I think they're all wrong. Li Yang is good-looking, so I should be staring at him every day. Ever since I spent a night in the Hall of Diligent Governance, no one in the palace has stopped me from going to see him, but he doesn't want to see me every day either. He never again asked me to sleep with him in the Hall of Diligent Governance. I don't know if it was because I kicked off the covers again that night, making him think I was a restless sleeper, but it doesn't matter. As long as I could see him often, that was more than enough. Crown Princess, you cannot enter today. The palace attendant at the entrance of the Hall of Diligent Governance stopped me. My head drooped instantly. Just then, a sudden crash of objects being thrown came from inside the hall, startling the attendant before me into a full-body shudder. I, however, was already used to it. My younger sister also loves to throw things. I walked forward, just about to press my face against the door to see if Li Yang was crying, when a palace attendant stopped me. His fingers were trembling at that moment. Please go back, Crown Princess. His Highness is having an episode. His Highness is ill. Then I certainly cannot go back. I took the food box with snacks from the nanny's hands, pushed open the door despite their attempts to stop me. Inside the hall, everything was in disarray. Li Yang sat dejectedly before the desk, his black robe embroidered with intricate floral patterns, looking somewhat disheveled. Unlike his usual prideful and aloof demeanor, the strand of hair hanging over his forehead and his reddened eyes made him appear somewhat frenzied at this moment. Your Highness the Crown Prince. I walked in softly, calling out to him in a low voice. Inside the door, several palace attendants were kneeling on the ground. Upon seeing me enter, they hurriedly scrambled out. At that moment, Li Yang raised his head, the corners of his eyes tinged with a deep crimson, as if trying his utmost to see me clearly. He squinted and raised a hand to rub his head. Before I could even approach, he growled, "Get out." The nanny hurried in to pull me, trying to drag me out. I broke free from the nanny's grasp, picked up the food box, and stepped forward, winking at him. Your Highness, I made some delicious Osmanthus pastries today. Would you like to try one? He looked at me, his gaze heavy, one hand pressed to his head as he frowned deeply. Are you having a headache? I quickly set down the food box and moved behind him. Let me massage it for you. As I spoke, under the nanny's astonished gaze, I raised my hand and placed it on Li Yang's head. I began to massage it just as my mother used to do for my father. While massaging, I gently blew on his head and asked, Your Highness, does it still hurt? He didn't say a word. The nanny had quietly slipped out at some point without anyone noticing. After a long while, Li Yang finally reached out and took hold of my hand. Who taught you that? His voice was no longer as it had been earlier. It was husky and raspy, yet carried an indescribable pleasantness. I obediently replied, I learned it from mother. Father used to have headaches often too. In the past, whenever I mentioned my father, Li Yang would always ask me a few more questions about him. This time, however, he didn't ask any further. He only left the Osmanthus cakes and told me to head back early. It was only later that I learned he had suffered from these headaches since childhood. The nanny told me that everyone in the palace knew he acted like a madman when his illness flared up. Many palace servants had died during his episodes. You must be careful in the future, the nanny warned me with lingering fear. I shook my head. If I don't massage him, wouldn't he be in even more pain? Seeing that she couldn't persuade me, the nanny didn't bring it up again. The days that followed continued as usual. Not many days later, an imperial edict arrived to depose the Crown Prince. I didn't understand what depose meant. In the future, the Crown Prince will no longer be the Crown Prince, the nanny explained to me with a worried expression. I looked up at her. Then who is he? Li Yang. I still didn't understand. Li Yang has always been Li Yang. That day, I waited in the Hall of Diligent Governance for a very, very long time before someone finally carried Li Yang in. His clothes were covered in blood, and I was so frightened that for a moment, I didn't know where to place my hands. All I could do was watch people come and go. Finally, after the maids changed him into dry clothes, they all withdrew. Why are you crying? Li Yang, lying on the bed, turned his head to look at me. I sniffled and asked him tearfully, Does it hurt? His long eyelashes trembled slightly, his eyes a deep, unfathomable darkness. Don't you know what day it is today? He pulled me over, one hand gripping my neck, his voice low. What was your father's intention in marrying you off to me? Don't you understand? I was so frightened that I froze for a moment. Then I nodded. I understand, I said in a tearful whisper. I told my father that I liked you and was willing to marry you. His eyes trembled slightly as he gently released his hand. I lay on top of him and cautiously asked the question I had wanted to ask since the night of his grand wedding a month ago. Your Highness the Crown Prince, do you think Yao Yao is too foolish and unwilling to marry me? Li Yang remained silent. I looked up again and saw that he had already fallen asleep. I pouted, then quietly slipped off him and carefully lay down beside him. They said we can't call you Your Highness the Crown Prince anymore, I said, lying on the bed and turning my head to look at him. So, can I just call you husband from now on? His eyes were closed, but his long eyelashes seemed to flutter slightly. The only response I received was his very light breathing. If you don't speak, I'll take it as your agreement. I don't know if it's because I like the term husband or because I'm pleased with my own cleverness. After saying that, I covered my mouth and giggled foolishly, laughing. I ended up falling asleep as well. When I woke up, there was a clamor of noisy voices coming from outside the door. Li Yang beside me was still asleep. I tiptoed out and saw a few unfamiliar palace attendants at the door. Who are you? I stood at the entrance of the Hall of Diligent Governance, glaring at the palace servants before me while letting the nanny adjust my loose bun. The leading servant, upon seeing it was me, cracked an unpleasant grin. I am one of His Majesty's attendants, here today by the Emperor's oral decree, he said, then raised his voice toward the hall. The criminal Li Yang is to be exiled to Yangzhou. He must depart today and is not permitted to linger in the capital. After speaking, he turned his gaze to me. His Majesty also said that Chancellor Jiyu has served the nation with utmost dedication, as the Chancellor's daughter, as long as Li Yang writes a letter of separation, you may safely return to the Chancellor's residence. I blinked my eyes. What is a divorce letter? I turned to ask the nanny. The nanny looked a bit troubled and whispered in my ear, it means cutting off your relationship with Li Yang. I don't want that. But before I could speak, footsteps sounded from behind me. I turned around and saw Li Yang standing inside the doorway. He was only wearing the white undergarments the palace maids had changed him into yesterday, his handsome face as pale as the snow that fell last winter. I quickly turned to run to his side, forgetting that the nanny was still styling my hair. My hair was yanked sharply, the pain bringing tears to my eyes. Li Yang, His Majesty, considering your injuries have not yet healed, has granted you special permission to leave the capital by carriage. The carriage is already waiting at the palace gate. That detestable palace eunuch, upon seeing Li Yang emerge, raised his voice even higher and shriller. Li Yang did not lift his eyes to look at him, only letting his gaze fall calmly upon me. He stared at the side of my hair that had come loose from its bun, frowning slightly. Perhaps he thought I was truly foolish, recalling the words the nanny had just spoken. Frightened, I quickly grabbed the hem of his robe and shook my head at him. Husband, please, don't divorce me. His eyes were dark, reflecting my somewhat flustered face. After watching me for a moment, he raised his hand and pulled the corner of his garment from my grasp. Do you know where Yangzhou is? He asked me softly. I was taken aback for a moment and instinctively turned to look at the nanny. The nanny quickly stepped forward, pulling me aside. She knelt down before Li Yang. The young lady has been frail since childhood and cannot endure the bitter cold of the north. This old servant dares to ask you for a letter of divorce. Nanny, I looked at her, somewhat taken aback. From the time I can remember, she has always been by my side. Before my mother passed away, she told me that I must always listen to Nanny's words. I have always been obedient, but now, the nanny wants Li Yang to divorce me. Miss, the nanny turned to embrace me, her eyes reddening. The master wants to protect you, so please listen to him. I don't understand. It was they who spoke of husband and wife being one, and now it is they who want Li Yang to divorce. I anxiously looked up at Li Yang. He curled the corner of his mouth, let out a cold laugh, and turned to walk back. If it's what Prime Minister Jiyu wants, I certainly have no reason not to give it. Li Yang wrote me a letter of separation. I couldn't quite make out all the words on it, only knowing that his handwriting was exceptionally beautiful, just like the man himself. Miss, the nanny, seeing me staring at the divorce agreement without saying a word, felt a pang of heartache. I carefully put away the divorce agreement and turned to look at her. Nanny, I'm hungry. I want to eat the sweet lotus seed soup you make. She was taken aback for a moment. All right, I'll go make it for you right away. She quickly agreed, turning to leave as she spoke. It's good that you can eat. It's good that you can eat. As soon as she left, I hurriedly made my way into the hall. After rummaging around inside the hall for a while, I stuffed all the things I liked into my clothes. Finally, Taking advantage of the servant's inattention, I slipped out through the window at the back. That annoying servant said the carriage to send Li Yang off was already waiting at the palace gate. I've been to the palace gate a few times, it's quite a distance. By the time I quietly slipped into the carriage, my legs were already a bit weak. I huddled in the corner of the carriage, pulling a thin blanket over myself. That way, no one will find out. I don't know how long I waited. Finally, footsteps sounded outside, and soon someone boarded the carriage. I was so frightened that I forgot to breathe for a moment, not daring to move a muscle. But Li Yang still found out. He lifted the thin blanket, and upon seeing it was me, his brow twitched slightly. How did you know I was hiding here? I tugged at the thin blanket and whispered to him. He seemed to have heard something amusing, glancing around the car. What do you think? I do not know. I didn't make a single sound in the past. When playing hide and seek with the nanny, I had never been found hiding on the bed like this. It must be that Li Yang is just a bit smarter. I reached out and gently tugged at Li Yang's sleeve, whispering to him, please don't make me leave. Okay. He looked down at me. I'm very obedient, and it's been a long time since I've been sick. What the nanny said isn't true, I said as I sat down beside him. Can you take me to Yangju with you? He glanced at my clothes, which were stuffed full, and his eyes seemed to sparkle with a few stars. To Yangju, he asked me. I nodded. Do you know that once you go to Yangju, you will never again taste these delicious pastries or wear those beautiful dresses? I don't know about that, but how could pastries compare to Li Yang's importance? It's all right. I pursed my lips. I won't eat them anymore from now on. He gently lifted my chin with his hand, his gaze growing even more intense. Your father would not be pleased. I blinked, my eyes rimmed with red. I was actually lying to you, I said with a pout, my voice full of grievance. Father doesn't like me at all. After mother passed away, he hardly ever came to see me. I know he thinks I'm too foolish. He prefers my clever half-sister. I sniffled, looking pitifully at Li Yang. Do you also like my clever half-sister, which is why you want to divorce me? His hand, resting on my chin, slowly traced along the edge of my jaw, a faint, ambiguous smile playing at the corner of his mouth. That's not necessarily the case, he said, his voice light and clear, yet indescribably pleasant to the ear. I didn't understand what he meant by that. Is he saying he doesn't mind that I'm foolish, or that he doesn't like my half-sister? Before I could ask him further, a man's voice suddenly came from outside. You're high, master. What's that sound inside? I quickly covered my mouth and shook my head at Li Yang. Li Yang lifted the curtain beside him, glanced at the high palace wall, and then said, it's nothing, let's go. I turned my head to look at him. The sun outside was blazing, and a few rays of sunlight filtered through the curtain, falling upon his tall nose bridge. It was impossible to tell whether he was happy or not. He let the curtain fall and turned to look at me. His gaze was deep, not a single ray of the fine sunlight reaching within. He spoke softly, since you came of your own accord, do not regret it in the days to come. The road from Kyoto to Yangju was long. Li Yang remained mostly silent the whole way, with only me chattering non-stop. By the end of the month, I had nearly recounted all 16 years of my life in the Prime Minister's residence. After mother passed away, only the nanny was kind to me. As I spoke, I lowered my gaze to the small cloth doll in my hands. This was sewn for me by the nanny. I gently touched the doll's face and whispered, I wonder if Mama saw the letter I wrote for her. Li Yang, who had been reading, looked up. He asked me with some surprise, you know how to write? Of course, my mother taught me before. I nodded, then added a bit guiltily, but I've forgotten most of it. Now I can only write my own name. Li Yang's brow twitched slightly before he could speak. The carriage suddenly came to a halt. I lost my balance and tumbled into his arms, my head throbbing from the impact. Who goes there? Came the voice of Li Yang's guard, Qing Shan, from outside the carriage. I am the king of this mountain. If you wish to pass through here, leave your money and women behind. A rough voice came from ahead. Li Yang furrowed his brow and helped me up. As soon as I steadied myself, I heard him say calmly, kill them. Yes, AMR responded clearly outside. The sound of fighting soon erupted. Seeing me staring at him, Li Yang silently curled the corner of his mouth. Scared, I blinked and raised my hand, pointing at his chest. Does it hurt here? I touched my head. Did I bump you and make it hurt? He had just frowned. It must be because I bumped him and it hurt. He seemed not to have expected me to ask that, and for a moment, he was taken aback, afraid he might get angry and drive me away. I quickly leaned in and blew a couple of breaths on it for him. Just as I looked up to ask if it still hurt, he suddenly pulled me into his arms. In the blink of an eye, our carriage was split in two. Everything suddenly brightened before my eyes. I was just about to turn my head to look back when Li Yang's hand pressed down on my head. "Master, take the madam and go first." Qing Shan's voice came from behind, but I was buried in Li Yang's embrace, unable to see anything. All I knew was that Li Yang was holding me as he jumped off the carriage and kept running forward. The wind whistled past my ears as I obediently nestled in Li Yang's embrace, suddenly feeling a bit of joy. This was the first time Li Yang had ever held me. He carried a faint scent of medicinal herbs, which was quite pleasant. I don't know how long we ran before he finally stopped in front of a dilapidated temple and set me down from his arms. The sky was already quite dark by now. The dilapidated temple ahead was pitch black, and nothing could be seen inside. Frightened, I tightly gripped Li Yang's clothes and followed him as we walked in. "Now you know to be afraid." He glanced down at my hand clutching his clothes, his tone seeming to carry a hint of amusement. "I am not afraid." As soon as my words fell, something in the corner moved. Frightened, I quickly clung to Li Yang. Li Yang calmly took out a fire starter from his chest, lit it, and cautiously moved it toward the corner. "It's just a mouse." A mouse. I was even more terrified, shrinking behind him, not daring to open my eyes. After a while, he let out a light chuckle, afraid of mice but not of me. He settled me down beside him and lit the fire in front of me. "I can't tell if you're brave or timid." I didn't understand why he was comparing himself to a mouse. Had his mind gone dull too? Mice steal things. They're bad mice, so that's why I'm afraid of them. I patiently explained to him. "But you're the best husband in the whole world, so of course I'm not afraid of you." He was taken aback for a moment. "The best in the whole world?" I nodded emphatically, tilting my head to give him a radiant smile. A warm tongue of flame suddenly leaped up, casting its glow over Li Yang. It stretched the shadow behind him long. I saw him lower his eyes slightly. Beneath his long lashes lay a patch of shadow amidst the crackling sound of firewood. I heard him let out a laugh. His voice was very soft, with a touch of emotion I couldn't quite grasp. "Everyone says you're foolish, but I don't think so. You're quite skilled at winning people over. Except for Mother, no one has ever praised me for being clever. Li Yang is truly a very, very good person." It's raining outside the dilapidated temple. A fierce wind howled, battering the broken windows with a loud, clattering noise. A bolt of lightning tore through the night sky, then came the deafening thunder. I shrank back in fear, burrowing deeper into Li Yang's embrace. His scorching breath fell upon my face. When I looked up, I saw his eyes tightly shut, his forehead beaded with fine sweat. "Husband," I whispered, calling to him. Another clap of thunder struck, trembling all over. I sat up and reached out to shake Li Yang. "Li Yang." I was a bit scared, my voice unconsciously trembling with tears. But no matter how many times I called his name, he never opened his eyes. My palm pressed against his arm could feel his scorching body heat. Even through the layers of clothing, I mimicked the nanny's actions, raising my hand to touch his forehead, then touching my own. It was indeed much hotter than mine. I had fallen ill like this several times before. The nanny would always replace the cool towel for me, soothing me by saying it would be better soon. I searched all over myself for a long time but couldn't find a single handkerchief. I must have lost it again. I had no choice but to grit my teeth, tear a piece from the hem of my skirt, run outside to soak it in the rain, and then bring it back to place on Li Yang's forehead. I don't know how many times it repeated. But Li Yang still hadn't gotten better, and outside the window, another clap of thunder fell. Frightened, I buried myself in his arms and couldn't help but cry. "Husband, can you please get better soon? Yao Yao is scared." I don't know if it was the thunder that was too loud, or my crying that was too loud. Li Yang really woke up. He raised his hand and gently brushed the corner of my eye, startling me so much that I abruptly lifted my head. "Why are you crying?" His voice was somewhat hoarse, sounding like coarse gravel falling upon the heart. I had intended to laugh, But instead, I ended up crying even louder. After sobbing for a long while, I finally managed to say, "Husband, please don't leave me all alone." He looked at me, his eyes dark and inscrutable, as he removed the torn cloth from his forehead, as if letting out an extremely light sigh. "In this world, the one who doesn't wish for my death is probably only you." I didn't quite understand his words. I only saw him take out some kind of pill from his chest and put it into his mouth. Before I could ask what medicine he had taken, another bolt of lightning struck. I quickly burrowed into his embrace. His body stiffened, but he did not push me away, perhaps because his embrace was exceptionally warm. I soon fell asleep in his arms. When I woke again, it was already the next morning. Bright sunlight streamed in through the doorway. I was still covered by Li Yang's outer robe. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and then heard the sound from outside the door. "Master, I've investigated. Those people aren't bandits." It sounded like Qingshan's voice. "Qingshan has found us." I smiled and stood up, but just as I reached the door, I heard Qingshan whisper softly, "Just as you predicted, Prime Minister Gu's people have also arrived. Father is here too." I leaned against the door, looking at the two figures not far away. Hearing the sound, the two of them turned around in unison to look at me. I blinked, picked up Li Yang's clothes, and walked over. "What is father doing here?" I asked, feeling a bit guilty as I glanced at Li Yang. "Did the nanny report to him?" Li Yang stared at the outer robe I was dragging on the ground and slightly furrowed his brow. He reached for his outer robe, pointing at the person running over from not far away, and said to me, "Your father didn't come, but she did." I followed his finger and looked over. I saw the nanny. I was just about to call out to her, but then I remembered I had sneaked out, so I quickly hid behind Li Yang. Not long after, the nanny ran up to us. "Miss," she called softly, her eyes red and swollen. I tilted my head slightly to look at her. "Nanny, I'm not going back. I've already torn up the divorce letter. Everything I wrote before is null and void." Li Yang's eyes seemed to flicker slightly as he lowered his head to look at me. I also looked up at him. "Your handwriting is beautiful," and I was reluctant to part with it, but I was afraid that if I didn't tear it up, I wouldn't be able to call you my husband. He smiled, reaching out to pull me behind him. "Since it's already torn up, let's do as you said, consider it null and void." The old nanny's face showed urgency. "You," Li Yang turned to look at her, his eyes and brows turning cold. "In a few days, they will arrive as well. Take good care of your young lady. I will naturally ensure her safety." On the day they arrived in Yangju, it began to snow. As soon as the nanny led me into a small courtyard, I spotted a kitten curled up in a corner. The kitten was shivering from the cold, so I stepped forward and carried it into the house. "Nanny, look, how wonderful Yangju is," I said, holding the kitten up to her with a bright smile. "Yangju has kittens." The nanny looked at the kitten with affection, then at me, and sighed. "Miss, young Master Li is not a good match for you." I blinked, the corners of my mouth drooping. Holding the kitten, I said to her with a serious expression, "Nanny, my husband is a good man. Please don't speak of him like that anymore." Nanny said nothing more, only sighed again. After she had tidied up the room, I eagerly picked up the kitten and went to find Li Yang. This estate was much smaller than the Eastern Palace. I hadn't walked far when I spotted Qingshan standing guard outside a room. Before I could approach, Qingshan stopped me. "Madam," he lowered his head, "the master is having an episode. Please don't go in." I was momentarily stunned before remembering Li Yang's chronic headaches. The journey had been so uneventful that I had nearly forgotten about it. I handed the kitten in my arms to Qingshan and smiled at him. "Could you hold this for me?" Taking advantage of Qingshan's moment of distraction, I lifted my skirt and ran inside. No lamps were lit in the room. It was pitch black. Only by the faint light from outside could I see the despondent figure sitting in the middle. Hearing footsteps, Li Yang looked up. The corners of his eyes were crimson, exactly the same as that day. "Husband," I ran to his side, "let me massage your head for you." After saying this, I went behind him as usual and began massaging his head. Qingshan stood at the doorway holding the kitten, looking utterly torn. Li Yang remained silent for a moment. The room was so quiet that it seemed only the sound of our breathing could be heard. "Husband, I found a kitten today," I said, stroking his head as I glanced up at the little cat in Qingshan's arms by the door. The kitten seemed to sense something and let out a meow. Only then did Li Yang, who had been keeping his eyes closed, slowly open them and look toward the door. Coming quickly, I called out to Qingshan, "Let your husband see the adorable kitten." Qingshan walked in, holding the kitten with an especially awkward expression. I'm not sure if it's just my imagination, but it seemed like something flashed past outside the window. Qingshan walked up to Li Yang, crouched down, and handed the kitten over, lowering his voice as he said, "It's gone." Li Yang nodded slightly and reached out to stroke the kitten's head. The kitten squinted its eyes, looking utterly content. It made me feel a bit sour. "Husband, does your head still hurt?" I asked Li Yang. "It doesn't hurt anymore." I quickly smiled and ran to Li Yang's side. Squatting down and looking up at him with sparkling eyes, he was slightly taken aback, pouting. I took his hand off the kitten's head and placed it on my own. He chuckled, his palm gently ruffling my hair. "Yarrow Yarrow is really amazing," he said, his voice carrying a light, amused tone. "It sounds even gentler than the snow outside the window." My heart flutters. This is the first time Li Yang has called me by my nickname, and it sounds so lovely. I glanced smugly at the little cat nestled in Qingshan's arms, then turned to Li Yang with a beaming smile. "So, husband, can you accompany me to sleep tonight? Ever since we left that dilapidated temple, I haven't had a single good night's sleep. After pondering for many days, I've come to the conclusion that Li Yang's embrace is still the most comfortable place to sleep." Li Yang's hand on my head stiffened. I blinked. After a long pause, I finally heard him say, "Okay." I jumped up happily and took the kitten from the stunned Qingshan's arms. "You are the best, my husband." I nuzzled my face against the kitten. "Yangju is good too. I like Yangju." On our second day in Yangju, many guests came to our home. According to the nanny, all the visitors were officials from Yangju. Some came during the day, others came at night. Li Yang seemed busier than ever before, even more so than when he was in the Eastern Palace. I sat in the courtyard, holding the kitten and watching the snow on the treetops, while the nanny draped a fur-collared cloak over my shoulders from behind. "Miss, would you like to go out for a stroll today?" My eyes lit up. "Is that allowed?" "Of course it is." Yangju was different from the capital. The streets were quite deserted. Apart from a few beggars huddled in the corners, there was hardly anyone in sight. "This Yangju is bitterly cold," the matron said as she led me into a shop. "Business can only be done in warm rooms." I listened, only half understanding. It was a place to eat outside the door. It was quiet without a sound, but as soon as I stepped inside, the place was bustling with noise and excitement. The nanny led me to sit at a table and ordered a few of my favorite dishes. Holding my chopsticks, I curiously looked around. I overheard a conversation happening nearby. "That old man with the white beard in the west of the city really has some skills. Old Wang's wife's headache that she's had for over a decade was cured by just one dose of his medicine. Is it really that miraculous?" "Headache?" I leaned in, looking at them with eager eyes. "Can the person you mentioned cure headaches?" I asked them. They exchanged a glance, then smiled at me. "Of course, he's a miracle doctor." My eyes lit up. A miracle doctor just 2 days ago. I also heard Qingshan telling Li Yang that there was an all-powerful miracle doctor in Yangju City. Finding him, wouldn't that be able to cure Li Yang's headache? "Could you take me to see him?" I begged them. Yangju is mostly full of good people. Upon hearing my words, the few of them didn't hesitate and immediately wanted to take me to find that miracle doctor. I glanced back. The nanny hadn't returned from the restroom yet. "Hurry up, or we won't find it if we're late," someone urged me. I had no choice but to nod and follow along. They led me for quite a while before finally stopping in front of a shop. Someone turned to look at me. "This divine healer is very expensive. Do you have the money?" "Of course I do. Is this enough?" I took out my purse to show them. They exchanged another glance, then smiled and led me inside. "That miracle doctor is truly remarkable. I merely mentioned Li Yang had a headache, and he immediately prescribed a dose of medicine for me." I poured out all the money from my purse and gave it to him, then eagerly turned to head back. But before I could even step out the door, someone blocked my path. "Leaving so soon, little lady?" one of them said with a smirk, looking me up and down. "Why not stay and have some fun with us?" I shook my head. "Not today. I needed to hurry back and give Li Yang his medicine. That's not for you to decide. One person chuckled twice and then lunged at me, knocking the medicine from my arms onto the ground. I got angry. What are you doing? I quickly picked up the medicine and held it protectively in my arms. I don't like you. I don't want to play with you. Seeing me angry, they laughed even more heartily. They all closed in on me together. The white-bearded old man who had originally prescribed my medicine was nowhere to be seen. They forced me to keep backing away until someone stepped forward and tore off my cloak. Someone grabbed my hand again. The medicine fell to the ground once more, and my wrist ached from their tight grip. I was both angry and scared, unsure of what to do in that moment. Just as I began kicking wildly, the door of the clinic was kicked open. I was crying so hard I could barely catch my breath, and when I looked up, I saw Li Yang standing at the door. The snow behind him drifted slowly into the room. A chill ran through me, but colder than the swirling snow outside was the handsome face of Li Yang. Without even a frown, I could feel his anger. Who are you? Before the man holding me could finish his sentence, Li Yang struck him down with a single palm. The men who had seized me instantly let go of my hands and tried to flee, but Li Yang spared none of them, drawing a dagger from his sleeve and killing them all. The splattered blood fell upon his plain white robe on such a cold day. He was only wearing a thin, long robe. Husband, I called out to him, sobbing and sniffling. He sheathed his dagger and turned to look at me, his eyes filled with annoyance, probably because he thought I was too foolish. I quickly picked up the medicine from the ground and showed it to him like a treasure. Look, I had a divine doctor prescribe medicine for headaches, he said after taking it. You'll never have a headache again. He lowered his gaze to the medicine packet in my hand, his long eyelashes trembling slightly. Perhaps I had cried too much earlier and was too exhausted. Just as I tried to smile at him, my legs gave way and I fell backward. Li Yang hurried forward to catch me as he wrapped me in his cloak and carried me out. He happened to run into the nanny who had rushed over. The nanny glanced at the scene inside the room and gasped in fright. Li Yang turned his head to look at her, his face as cold as ice. Is this how you serve others? I tugged at Li Yang's sleeve, quietly defending the nanny. It's not the nanny's fault. I ran out on my own. If you must punish someone, punish me. He looked down at me, his expression softened slightly, but his voice remained somewhat cold. Punish you to never leave my side from now on. I was taken aback. This seems more like a reward. I've been tricked. That miracle doctor was a fraud. The medicine you gave me for my headache was fake too. However, Li Yang didn't seem to mind at all, as long as I stayed with him in the study starting from the next day and didn't go anywhere else. He even had Qingshan set up a low table for me nearby and brought me brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones. At first, I was having a lot of fun, but after I yawned who knows how many times, I finally fell asleep in my dream. I was eating sweet and rich Osman thus cakes when suddenly someone snatched them away. Just as I was about to snatch them back, my head sank down, dazed. I opened my eyes and saw Li Yang's face right before me. He somewhat helplessly cupped my head in his palm, glancing at the messily drawn pictures scattered across my desk. I jolted awake in an instant, hiding one of the sketches I had secretly drawn of him behind my back. Li Yang glanced behind me, a faint, almost imperceptible smile flickering at the corners of his eyes as he said softly, "How about we learn to write characters today?" I didn't catch what he said, so I quickly nodded. He then stood up and took a book from the shelf nearby. "Finish these 2 pages today before you eat," he said, opening the book to 2 pages and placing it on my desk. I could only recognize a few of the characters on them. "It looks very difficult to write." I looked up at him with pleading eyes, hoping he would soften a little, but I never expected him to turn around and walk straight out, only looking back at me when he reached the door. "Until you finish writing, you're not allowed to go anywhere." I pursed my lips and nodded in agreement. After an hour had passed, I finally finished writing those 2 pages. Though the characters were all crooked and askew, the matron looked at my handwriting and silently shook her head, but I was quite satisfied. "Why hasn't my husband returned yet?" I asked the nanny while admiring my own calligraphy. The nanny remained silent for a long moment before replying, "The young master is meeting with guests in the front hall. Another guest has arrived." I nodded and stood up. "Are you going out, miss?" the nanny asked. Stepping aside, I picked up the paper from the table and smiled as I walked past her. I'm going to show my husband my calligraphy. So soon? You've finished writing. Li Yang is sure to praise me. Before the matron could speak, I dashed out. The path from the study to the front hall was quite long. Just as I reached the outside of the hall, I spotted a familiar figure inside. Qingshan at the entrance stopped me once again. Ling Yuan, I called out to the person inside from the doorway. The person standing in the hall, upon hearing my voice, indeed turned around. It was one of father's attendants. When he saw me, his previously furrowed brow relaxed, and his eyes crinkled into a smile as he called out, "Young miss." Seeing that the young miss is safe and sound, this servant can rest assured. I will faithfully report what you said to the master, he said, turning back to bow to Li Yang. He then turned and walked over to me, bowing to me as well. I asked him excitedly, "How did you get here?" "Naturally. I came to see the young lady," he replied gently. "Is the young lady doing well here?" I nodded. "I'm well, and my husband is well too." At that moment, Li Yang also came out and stood by my side. Ling Yuan glanced at him and smiled. "That's good then." After saying that, he turned and left. I watched his figure and pouted. I haven't even asked him how his father is doing yet. "Have you finished writing your characters?" Li Yang's voice drifted down from above me. I withdrew my gaze and unfolded the paper in my hand to show him. "All done. I wrote them pretty fast, didn't I?" His gaze fell upon my writing, and the corner of his eye seemed to twitch slightly. After a while, he finally looked at my beaming face. He sighed. "Never mind. Take your time." Li Yang seemed to take great interest in teaching me how to write. Every day, he would keep me in the study to practice writing. I wrote until my wrist ached. "Can we skip writing today?" I pleaded with him. Looking utterly miserable, he rubbed his head and looked at me. My eyes lit up, and I quickly ran over to rub his head for him. "Do you have a headache? Let me rub it for you." He glanced at me. "Does your wrist not hurt anymore?" "It doesn't hurt anymore. It doesn't hurt anymore. I can rub it for as long as you need. Just don't make me write anything." At that moment, Qingshan walked in from outside. Seeing me massaging Li Yang's head, he paused for a moment but pretended not to notice. He looked at Li Yang and said, "Master, the person has arrived." Li Yang nodded as Qingshan stepped aside. I saw an old man with a white beard walking in from outside. The white-bearded old man first felt Li Yang's wrist, then he let out a sigh. "You really can endure it," the white-bearded old man said, giving me a meaningful look. I blinked my eyes and looked at Li Yang. I saw that Li Yang's fair ears suddenly turned red. He slightly turned his head away and said somewhat impatiently, "Don't say things you shouldn't. That's not what I'm asking." The old man laughed and said, "This poison has invaded your lungs and internal organs. I think you understand that better than I do. Can't be cured." Qingshan looked at him with a tense expression. He shook his head. "It's not impossible to cure, but I need a few more ingredients. I have to go look for them." Only then did I understand what he meant. This was the all-powerful miracle doctor they had been talking about. Li Yang withdrew his hand and pulled me in front of him. "Check her as well." I quickly waved my hand. "I don't need it. I'm not sick. Let's check my husband's headache first." But Li Yang didn't listen to me. He pressed me down to sit on his lap, took my hand, and placed it on the desk. Just as the white-bearded old man was about to reach out, Li Yang took my handkerchief from the side and placed it over my wrist. I blinked before I could figure out why a handkerchief had been placed there. The old man's fingers rested on it. "There is a blockage in the mind, nothing too serious, but it will take some time to resolve." The old man withdrew his hand and looked at me. "Even so, it is clear that the lady is exceptionally intelligent, unlike others." He turned his head to look at Li Yang. "Aren't you afraid that in the future, you'll be like a bird freed from its cage, unable to settle within its confines?" I also looked at Li Yang. I didn't understand the meaning of his words. Li Yang's hand tightened slightly around my waist, and after a long moment, he lowered his gaze to look at me, then let her be. Though I couldn't understand what they were saying, I still felt somewhat happy. "Then I'll start tomorrow. It will take 1 month to cure both of you. And you must keep your promise to me." The white-bearded old man finished speaking and turned to leave. I remained sitting on Li Yang's lap, watching the old man and Qingshan leave together, and asked Li Yang, "Husband, am I sick too?" Li Yang didn't speak. I wiggled my bottom, turning around to look at him with sparkling eyes. Just as I caught sight of the crimson flush on his earlobe that seemed about to drip blood, he raised his hand and covered my eyes. It was a long moment before I heard his voice, somewhat hoarse. "Yes, things will get better soon. Yao Yao, just wait a little longer." "Wait for what?" I blinked, my eyelashes brushing against his palm. His body seemed to stiffen for a moment, and the breath that fell upon my forehead grew scorching hot. I suddenly remembered that day in the broken temple. It had felt just as hot then. "Husband, are you burning up again?" I quickly pried his hand away, wanting to touch his forehead, but I never expected his leg to suddenly shift. I lost my balance and stumbled forward. Then my lips met his, cool, soft, like a dragonfly skimming the water. A ripple stirred in the depths of my heart. Only after I had settled in my seat did I lick my lips. It seemed even sweeter than the pastries I had eaten the day before. Yet Li Yang did not look pleased. His eyes were dark and deep, as if they could swallow me whole. I was just about to say sorry. He stood up, placed me on the chair, and walked out without saying a word. How strange. The white-bearded old man came every day to give me acupuncture. The long needles pierced my head, and the pain made me cry several times. However, Li Yang always brought me some delicious pastries. I became happy. It would be even better if he no longer made me practice writing. A month passed quickly, and the nanny said my handwriting had improved by leaps and bounds recently. Looking at the page filled with the two characters Li Yang, it indeed looked much more pleasing than before. "Where is my husband?" I asked the nanny. The nanny shook her head. "He said he had some business to attend to and won't be back until tonight. He has been like this for the past few days, so busy that he's hardly ever around." It made the old man with the white beard stomp his feet in anger. I nodded and put away the copybook in my hand. When Li Yang returned, I had just finished brewing the last dose of medicine prescribed for him by the old man with the white beard. "Next month will be the new year," Li Yang said, looking at the bowl of medicine before him. "Do you want to return to the capital?" I sat across from him, resting my chin on my hands as I watched him. I don't know if it's because he's been too busy these days or because the medicine the old man prescribed is too bitter. "He looks like he's lost a bit of weight." I asked him, "Are you going back to Kyoto?" He shook his head. "I can't go back." "Then I'll stay with you." He picked up the medicine bowl, lowering his gaze to the dark, bitter liquid inside. Lost in thought, it was unclear what was on his mind. I took out the candied fruit from the box beside me, which the nanny had bought for me a few days ago. "Eat this after drinking, and it won't taste bitter anymore." I coaxed him. He chuckled softly, obediently downing the medicine in the bowl in one go, then ate the candied fruit I fed him. "Is it sweet?" I asked him with a beaming smile. He looked up at me, his eyes also curving into a smile. "Sweet." I propped my chin in my hands and asked him, "Then can you sleep with me tonight?" It had been a long time since he last slept with me. At first, I thought I had done something wrong again to make him angry, but later I gradually understood what was really going on. "I promise I won't move around, I'll just sleep quietly," I said to him earnestly. He was slightly taken aback, then smiled. Only then did he say, "That old man's medical skills are truly remarkable." In the end, he still agreed to stay and sleep with me. We both lay in bed after bathing. Even though we used to sleep like this before, now I only feel my heart racing, a wave of heat rushing straight to my face. "Husband," I turned to look at Li Yang. "Why were you poisoned?" According to the old man with the white beard, Li Yang's headaches were due to a particularly insidious poison. Once the illness strikes, he becomes manic and unable to control his own behavior. The old man also said that, judging by Li Yang's condition, this poison has been in him since childhood, which is why it has penetrated deep into his organs. Back in the capital, I often heard people say how cruel and heartless Li Yang was, lacking both virtue and compassion. Even the usually arrogant and spoiled half-sister was afraid of him. I only thought that everyone had misunderstood him, but I never imagined there was another layer of reason behind it. Li Yang opened his eyes and looked at the bed curtains beside him. The light in his eyes seemed to dim little by little. When I was 4 years old, my mother fell seriously ill, and her own younger sister was sent into the palace to become a noble consort. His voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. The noble consort treated me extremely well, swearing at my mother's sickbed that she would regard me as her own. After my mother passed away, she was made empress, the very model of virtue and grace in everyone's eyes. She continued to treat me well, always sending the finest things in the palace to my quarters first. No matter what mistakes I made, she would defend me before my father with all her might. I had heard of this virtuous stepmother of his. When I was 7, I suddenly suffered from a severe headache and, in my distress, killed a palace servant. She still tearfully pleaded with my father to forgive me. That day, I cried in her arms for a long time, believing she truly loved me as my own mother did. It wasn't until I was 9 that a pastry she sent rolled under the bed. That night, a stray cat wandered in from somewhere. After eating the pastry, it died. He turned his head to look at me, a trace of despair showing on his originally indifferent face. I instinctively grasped his hand under the covers. The corners of his eyes reddened. From beginning to end, she never intended for me to become emperor. She was solely focused on scheming for her own son, wanting me to die amid the scorn of the world, just to clear the way for her virtuous son. That year, he was only 9 years old. How desperate it must have been to see that dead kitten. My heart ached with a throbbing pain. It's okay, I held him, gently patting his back. Now you have me, I'll protect you. His chin rested lightly on my shoulder. It seemed as though a teardrop fell upon my neck. Scalding. After a long while, he finally asked me in a hoarse voice, "Yao Yao, why aren't you afraid of me? Everyone else fears me, thinking I'm a murderous monster." I held him tightly and laughed. When I was 7, at His Majesty's birthday banquet, my half-sister tricked me into going to a deserted garden. I couldn't find my way back and hid under a tree, crying. You jumped down from the tree, stuffed the Osmanthus pastry in your hand into mine, and said that everything depends on oneself for a chance to turn around. Did you know, when I was 8, I fell and hurt my head, forgetting many things, but I only remembered you. The Osmanthus cake that day was the sweetest. Li Yang sent me back to the capital. When I woke up, the carriage had already traveled a long way. The nanny sat beside me, clearly flustered when she saw me open my eyes. "Nanny, I don't blame you." I sat up, smoothing down my sleep-tousled hair with my hand. I knew Li Yang would definitely send me back to the capital because he believed the Prime Minister's residence was much safer than being by his side. I didn't argue or make a fuss, and followed the nanny back to the capital. It seemed father knew I was coming back, as he had someone clean up my old courtyard. It looks exactly the same as before, as if I had never left this place. "It's good to have you back," father said, looking at me. His face showed little expression, but his eyes held a hint of relief. I bowed to him respectfully and said softly, "Father, don't forget what you promised my husband." He was slightly taken aback. "Yao Yao, he promised me he would write you a letter of separation. From now on, you will have no husband." I lowered my eyes slightly. If I could tear up the letter of separation once, I can tear it up a second time. This time, his actions are fraught with danger. "Why must you be like this?" Father was somewhat angry. "Your stubbornness is exactly like your mother's. If I had known it would come to this, I would rather have died than let you marry him back then." Hearing this, I let out a laugh. "Father, I know you care for me in your heart, but you can't let go of power. You think that if Li Yang is deposed, you can protect me, which is why you want my half-sister to marry the 4th prince." I turned and walked into the room. "But I've told you before, I like Li Yang. It's just that he always dismissed it as childish nonsense." Father had no way to deal with me, so he could only leave in a huff. The nanny wanted to step forward and persuade me, but in the end, she didn't say a word. She only sighed. "The young lady has grown up now and has her own ideas. Madam's spirit in heaven would be pleased. If Mother's spirit in heaven is truly pleased, then please bless Li Yang." I sat down at the desk and wrote a letter to Li Yang. It was mostly filled with harsh words, telling him that if he died, I wouldn't live on alone. But by the end, I felt that wasn't right, so I added one more line: "I'll be waiting for you in the capital." A month passed after the letter was sent, and still there was no reply. Instead, father also became busy. Finally, in the 2nd month, news spread from the palace that the emperor was seriously ill. I suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of panic. The book in my hands became impossible to read. "Miss, the master has been detained in the palace." The nanny hurried in. I'm afraid His Majesty may not make it through the day. What about Li Yang? All of this should have been within Li Yang's plan, but until late into the night, I received no further news. Father didn't return from the palace either. I was so anxious that I couldn't sleep all night, and it wasn't until the next day that Father finally came back along with the news of the Emperor's passing. He really is dead. Father, where is Li Yang? I asked anxiously, my eyes red and swollen. He looked up at me, seemingly so angry that his beard seemed to bristle. You heartless child, I was gone all night, and the first thing you ask about is that wretched boy. Seeing him like this, my heart settled at once, and I hurried forward to support him. Of course I care most about you. I couldn't sleep a wink all night because you hadn't returned. His expression softened, but he shook off my hand. Don't try that with me. In the end, he still didn't tell me Li Yang's whereabouts that very day. The nanny heard from outside that the Empress and the fourth prince had been imprisoned, and the successor to the throne was not Li Yang. Could all of this have nothing to do with Li Yang? Unable to make sense of it, I thought of writing a letter to Yangju. Nanny, please close the window, it's a bit chilly. I had just started writing when I felt a draft blowing in from outside. Nanny didn't come in, but someone walked up behind me. A broad, warm hand covered mine, guiding my hand to finish writing the characters for husband on the paper. Li Yang carried a unique fragrance about him. It always had a way of calming my chaotic heart. I pursed my lips. Climbing over walls is hardly the act of a gentleman. Li Yang laughed behind me. It seems Yaro Yaro has read quite a few books these past 2 months. I put down my pen, turned around, and threw myself into his arms. For a moment, 1,000 words rushed to my mind, yet in the end, not a single one could be spoken. Just holding him felt like nothing more needed to be said. After a long while, I finally asked him, what exactly is going on now? Is it the second prince who has ascended the throne? He scooped me up in his arms and sat me on his lap. He didn't answer my question, only smiled and tapped the tip of my nose. You like Yangju? In a few days, we'll return to Yangju. I blinked. In a few days. He probably wanted to witness the execution of the Empress and the fourth prince with his own eyes. I thought you would reclaim the crown prince's position. That was the initial plan. A hint of warmth, like the melting snow of spring, lingered at the corners of his eyes, but later, I thought the little sparrow shouldn't be locked in a cage, and I realized the crown prince's position wasn't as important as the little sparrow. It felt as if something had gently nibbled at the tip of my heart, a dense wave of tingling numbness. I cupped his face and carefully pecked his lips. Husband. The smile in his eyes slowly faded, leaving only a deep, heavy darkness. It was astonishingly dark before I could react. He had already scooped me up and leaped out the window. As he vaulted onto the roof, I instinctively tightened my arms around his neck and gasped, where are we going? Back to Yangju. Wasn't it in a few days? There's something more important now. What is it? We haven't consummated the marriage yet. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.